TRC family and Eat South family. We are here to talk about some composting. And so Amanda is going to fill us in on how we can start our own composting at home and what compost is and why it's so good for us. So Amanda, what is composting?
Yeah, great. So hi everybody. We're going to get composting today to teach you how to do one at home. Compost is broken down organic matter that we add to our garden as fertilizer. And so it's made from things that you can find at your house, like kitchen scraps and yard waste.
Okay. And why should we compost? Like what is this? It sounds like garbage to me.
Yeah, it does. Well, it's a great way to reduce some of your waste and reuse that in a productive way. So a lot of us produce about 30% of our trash is compostable. So we'll show you some items from the kitchen. And then a lot of your yard waste is also compostable, and actually the city does take and compost some of those leaves and twigs you leave by the side of the road. And what we can do with that finished compost is grow vegetables, and so those are things that we want to do and we want to encourage folks to do.
Okay, so the composted materials eventually become like fertilizer, right?
That's right.
Okay, awesome. So what do I need to get started composting?
Alright, so we're going to show you a method that you can do even in an apartment style. So it's pretty contained and small and easy to manage. And so what we're going to do is we're going to use this red plastic tub that TRC has provided today in order to build a home compost. Now just to get started, to set some boundaries here, we want to know what's going into the compost and what isn't. So when we're composting, you can use things like grass clippings, leaves, twigs, branches, but you do not want to use things like meat or milk. Alright? You can use things like water, uncooked veggies and fruits, eggshells, and newspaper and brown paper, but not shiny paper or cooked food or plastic, because those things are not going to break down. Alright, so we have a yes pile and we have a no pile. In addition to the no pile I have up there, this is some weeds from our garden. The reason that you don't want to put weeds in your compost pile is because then you'll end up with weeds in your garden. Alright, so all of these things we're going to give to the chickens in a little bit. We also have things like shiny paper, like a magazine has shiny paper. We don't want to put that in there. And we don't want to put cartons or dairy, okay? You can just pour that down the drain or somewhere else outside in the yard.
Okay.
So, to get started, we are going to drill some holes in our tub. So, do you want me to do it? Alright. So, you just want to make sure using safety precautions, alright, with a drill, if you have a drill at home. Other ways to do this are to take another kind of sharp tool you might have in your toolbox and just be careful and make some holes. But the drill is the best way to do this. So alright, so we're finished making our holes in our container. Now, in addition to making the holes in your container, what we want to do is make sure that we have enough of those leaves and sticks and twigs, and that's going to help with airflow as well in your compost pile. Now, the reason that we want good airflow is because there are living creatures inside of compost piles that are breaking all of those materials down. Okay, so just like us, they need air in order to survive and thrive. So we always start our compost pile, and we can kind of angle this way, with twigs, sticks, and rough material on the bottom. Alright, and then we move on to adding, well, we're going to layer in some leaves on top of that. So we've got some good leaves, and there's a little bit of dirt in there. Don't be afraid to get a little bit of dirt in your pile either. That's going to help with that moisture content. And then we're going to come in in with our veggie scraps, okay? So this is William's compost bucket. Do they call them Williams? And this has the scraps, dirty tomato, dirty pepper scraps. We've got coffee grinds, and coffee grinds are actually considered a wet, a green material. All right, so that's gonna be balanced out by those leaves. All right, now this corn husk, do you think this is a green or a brown?
I don't know. It's fresh, so maybe it's green?
It's a little bit green, but mostly it's got that fiber content, right? It's gonna dry out pretty quickly. Might consider that a brown.
Okay.
Things like husks. All right, husks and cobs, right? So if you look in there, we've got a little more stuff going on. We've got eggshells, some celery, some zucchini top, right? So these are all things from our kitchen that can go straight in the compost because they're not cooked, they don't have oil on them, all right? They haven't been tampered with. Okay, now, something nice to layer in outside of those leaves and twigs is newspaper. So we all have readily available newspaper, or I guess these days some of us don't, but here's some nice shredded newspaper, okay? And you can get this from your neighbor if you don't have any. And most of the dyes that are used in newspaper are plant-based anyway, so that's fine to use that. All right, so now we've got our veggies covered up, all right? You always want, when you're adding your veggie scraps, to go ahead and cover them up. All right, now when we're building our pile, this is pretty dry. We're going to add some water. Now, Michelle, you want to add some water to our pile? So as you're layering, you want to go ahead and add water each time you do a layer. Perfect. Okay, so some more examples of things to go in would be like shredded cardboard. So I'll have Michelle shred some cardboard.
How big of pieces do they need to be?
So the smaller the pieces, the better, so our compost critters don't have to work quite as hard to break them down. And you'll get your compost faster, okay? So the smaller the pieces, the faster those compost critters can break everything down, the sooner you'll have your compost. Now in a compost like this smaller size, it'll heat up pretty quickly as long as you're adding and you fill it up. And so what's gonna happen is it's gonna heat up, and that heat is gonna help break things down. You're gonna keep it watered, keep it moist, and then you turn it every couple of weeks. We'll show you how to turn it, and then you'll leave it at the end. You'll leave it and you'll let it set for about two to 3 months. Okay. And then after that, you should be able to put your compost in your garden. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and add this filter, coffee filter. I have some tea leaves, leftover tea leaves, more eggshells, and also an egg carton. I'm gonna rip that up. All right, so it's nice and moist from whatever egg juices and coffee juices are in there. I have a little bit of green matter from my garden, okay? What else do I have? Tea bags and more eggshells. Perfect. Okay. Also, this tomato plant that didn't look like it was going to thrive, we can go ahead and throw that in there with the potting soil and all. Just break that up and add that, okay? So that potting soil is going to be a green or a brown?
Brown.
Brown! We're balancing out our greens and browns.
So do we need another layer of brown over this, or are we still adding green?
We can go ahead and add some more paper. We'll just tear up little pieces. And then we'll add some leaves on top of that. All right. So as you can see, we have a generous amount of browns on top of all of our greens, because what will happen is if you don't add those browns to balance out your greens, you're going to get a stinky compost pile, and you're going to get some rats coming around. So,
yeah, no, we don't want any of that.
All right, so let's go ahead and water it again.
One other tub for
Yeah,
greens.
we'll do that as our third layer. Perfect. All right. We've got some more greens. It looks like onion, peel, more coffee grinds, eggshells. Oh, and
Sweet potato.
Sweet potato peel. That'll be nice and delicious for our compost critters.
And a banana pie.
Oh, and a banana peel, another sweet thing. They love those things. All right, so anything like that, apple cores, watermelon rinds, all those things are great. Here you go, lid.
Thanks. Put that in our no pile because it's plastic.
Yeah, no pile, plastic. So let's go ahead and add a little bit more of our leaves and soil on top. And we'll go ahead and water this again. Okay? So now we've got 3 layers going on in our pile. And what you want to do until you're ready to add more to your pile, you want to keep it covered, okay? So we've got a nice mix of our greens and browns, and we're just gonna cover it up with some paper, or you can use cardboard, or if you have a lid. We don't have a lid today. If you have a lid to your bin, you can always just pop that lid on, all right? And this is just gonna help maintain that moisture content in your pile. Other questions about our simple, small compost?
So I'm gonna layer my stuff in, cover it up, keep it covered, and then in about 2 or 3 weeks, you said I'm gonna turn it. So what does turning it look like?
That's right. So we're gonna go ahead and show you what turning it looks like. We're gonna take our paper off. We're gonna get our, yeah, let's just use the hand trowel, not the pitchfork. Okay. So all you wanna do is basically bring the outside into the middle, okay? And you're gonna push the middle to the outside. So just kind of like if you were stirring that batch of cookie batter or something, you wanna just mix it all up together. This actually may be easier with my, all right, so there we go. Okay, go ahead and put our cover back on.
Is this the point that you would water it again if it looked dry?
If it did look dry, you could go ahead and add a little bit of water. And you can also fill this bin all the way to the top, and then like we said, just let it sit, all right? So if you have a bucket like this where you can keep your scraps in your kitchen, you can even use like a plastic tub like we saw. I use a plastic bag, a grocery bag, and I just keep that on the counter for a couple days. It's not as organized, but I might take that after a couple days and just throw it into a drawer in my fridge, and then I would bring that to the farm after a couple days and add it to the compost. So anywhere where you can keep your compost scraps, and then when you're ready to add those to your pile, just go ahead and do that, and then again layer those leaves right on top.
Okay, so when we turn, that's when we're gonna add more material to it, and we always want to balance our green and brown, and then water if it needs it, and cover it up, and then just leave it until when you get the bin full. You just leave it and just let it do its thing.
Let it do its thing. That's
okay.
Right.
And then, do you have an example of what that finished compost material is going to look like?
We do. We have some finished compost over here. I'll just bring up a handful, or you can follow. All right. So you can see. Got a nice moisture content in there. All of our leaves and twigs are pretty much broken down. There might be a few things that haven't completely broken down, but this is going to be some really good organic matter, and as Michelle was saying, fertilizer for our veggie garden. All right, so are there more questions, Michelle, or have we pretty much covered our compost?
I think we've pretty much covered it. I think that's a really good, simple project you can do at home. We chose this red bin from TRC because it had lost its lid, and so it wasn't very useful anymore. What are some other types of containers that you could use?
Oh yeah, good question. So if you want to follow me, I can show you what the farm compost looks like. This is for if you have like a lot of yard waste, you have a big yard, maybe you have a big garden. And then we'll show you one other kind that is also good for a smaller household. So here we are at our composting system. So we have a 4-bin system, and it operates from left to right, just like turn it into that next pile. All right, and so the same concept applies there. You're trying to get that outside stuff to the center, and every couple of months or so this gets turned. We're gonna clean out the chicken coop pretty soon, so we'll be turning this and adding the chicken scraps into that first bin. So that's pretty much our system. Let's see, are there any questions?
So this would be like, that down at the far end would be the composted matter that's been working for a couple of months and ready to go into the garden.
That's right, but this is pretty much almost empty right now because we had scouts rebuild this system. They wanted to volunteer on the farm and do a project, and actually they rebuilt this recently, and so we're just working with this first pile right now.
That's awesome. It looks like you use maybe some pallets and a few thinner boards.
That's right. That's right.
So it looks like it's something that could be built pretty inexpensively.
Yes.
If you're handy like that.
Yes.
You want an extra project.
Some people put these pallets out, and you can ask the store manager if you can take them. And some companies are actually close by that actually build pallets. So in Millbrook they actually build pallets. So you can go and they might throw out a few, and you can take those and use those. And yeah, and then these T-posts are just driven down into the ground to help hold it all together. And they are adjustable, so when you want to dig this out, you can slide these boards out. There's a lot of ants happening right now because it's summer.
but those are those critters that are living in there and helping break everything down. So ants in your compost pile aren't a bad thing, right?
That is right.
So, all right. Well, TRC and Eat South family, we hope that you, we're going to add some more brown stuff.
We're just going to show you one other method. So you've got the pallet method, you've got your rubber tub method, and one other method of composting, if you happen upon some fencing, which I think, William, you did happen upon some fencing, you can take and put it together, and like the pallets, you would stake some T-posts around this, and then you would just add leaves in, and you can add some kitchen scraps to the center of that pile. Alright, so we have bags of leaves from the city. Alright, and so all we would do is we would take these leaves and we add them into here, right? And we would build our pile up, okay? And then this may be a cold pile. And so that just basically means there's lots of ways for air to get in, and so it's not going to heat up like our contained pallet or rubber tub method. Those are more hot piles, and this would be a cold pile method. You would leave it for probably a year or so, and then start to use that compost out of there.
So this would be a method that would be really good for somebody that's thinking, you know, maybe towards like next summer.
That's right.
Or next spring, like, hey, I want to do a garden, but I'm going to do a bigger gardening project, and I don't want it yet. So this would be a really good method for that because it could wait that long for
Exactly, perfect. Yeah, so all those leaves, maybe you've still got bags of leaves in your yard, you could go ahead and throw them into something like this and let it compost down. Add your scraps and leaves, your kitchen scraps and leaves over the summer and fall and winter, and then next spring maybe plant a garden.
And does this one get turned the same way that the others do?
No, because it's really hard to get in there. This is kind of the concept of the cold pile, is that you're not going to be turning it, you're just going to let it be built in those layers and then just sit for a while. And then everything with the rain that will fall onto these leaves, everything will kind of compost down. You'll end up with some really good stuff at the bottom and in the center.
Okay. And how long is our composted material once it's reached that 2 to 3 month breakdown period and it's like ready to be used? How long is it good for? Is it just good until we use it, or?
Well, it's kind of like with potting soil. Like when you buy potting soil from the store, they basically tell you, hey, go ahead and use it pretty soon. Don't let it dry out, because basically you wanna go ahead and use it. But pretty much it doesn't really have an expiration date on it. But the life inside of the pile, the colder it gets, the more composted it is. There's going to be less life in there because there's going to be less and less for the critters in there to eat. And so you want to go ahead and add it when it's pretty much just finished, and then you're adding that life into your garden. that's the idea.
Okay, that sounds great. Well, thanks Amanda for showing us several different ways that we can build these compost piles. We can reduce the amount of stuff going into our landfills and make our gardens even healthier and our vegetables even better. So,
No problem.
Eat South family and TRC family, we hope that you're growing stuff.
Bye.